Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Darrin Goodman with GuitarControl.com bringing you this video lesson. Today I've got another lesson here for the beginners for soloing. I got a couple of easy guitar solos that you can play without a lot of experience in lead guitar playing and stuff. So if you're new to guitar and you'd like to, be able to play a couple of cool melodies, solos that are recognizable and stuff, then you should dig this lesson. So be sure to click on the link in the description for the tabs, and let's get close up and take a look at what we got going on here. All right, so both of the solos we're going to look at are both from Green Day songs. I'm not a big fan of Green Day per se, but I use a lot of their material in teaching because it's just worked out that a lot of their songs are really great for beginners and stuff. Because they sound good and everybody's heard them. They're really recognizable, but they're not really difficult to play and stuff. They're fun to play, not too challenging for a beginner. So the first one we're going to look at here is the solo for Boulevard of Broken Dreams. Now, this does have something that you do have to do when you're playing this that is kind of challenging if you're a beginner, if you're new. So let's just kind of take a look at what we got here that is going to be the kind of the challenging thing to do at first. So all of the notes are being played on two strings, but they're just the same note. They're just an octave apart from each other. So your first finger will be playing on the fourth string, and then your fourth finger will be playing on the second string. So, and there'll be two frets in between, so it's the same shape. We're just going to move around. So if we play here, for example, I'm on the fourth fret of the fourth string with my first finger, and the seventh fret of the second string with my fourth finger. It's the same pitch, right? Okay, but that string in between, you don't want to hear that. So what I'm doing is my first finger here, I'm fretting this note, but I've got it laying down so that way it's muting that third string. And then my fourth finger is playing this note on the second string, but it's muting the first string. So that way when you strum, you start on the fourth string and you just strum all the way across. And that way all you should hear is just those two notes. And then the other strings are just kind of making like a percussive sound. So when you're working on this at first, in theory it seems pretty easy, but one of the problems you're going to have is that you'll put you'll put your fourth finger, you'll lay it down too much, and then you'll actually fret the note on the first string. And then the same thing with your first finger. You don't want it to end up fretting the note on the third string. So what you're going to have to do is just kind of, move your hand around. Like if you bend your wrist and roll out forward, then you kind of come up, more on the tips of your fingers. So you're going to want to come back, but not so much that you're barring. So you got to kind of find that sweet spot. So if you are a beginner and you go to do this and you find, immediately that you're having problems doing that, first thing you're going to want to do is just put your hand in the position where you only hear the notes that you want to hear, and then remove your hand and put it back on again, find the spot, and just do that until each time you reach up and do it, you're doing it correctly. Now, as we move across the fretboard, that same shape just you keep doing that same shape. So as you move around and the frets either get closer together or further apart, it's easy to end up getting the space between your fingers wrong. There's got to be two vacant frets in between. So like when you move up, sometimes you end up, you only have one in between, or you come down here, or excuse me, you go up and you have more than you need, or you come down lower, the frets are farther apart and you don't get enough. So you really have to kind of watch that. So this is another one that you're just going to want to play very slowly at first to make sure that you're getting everything precisely the way it's supposed to be. Now the timing on this, everything is equally spaced apart. You have 4 eighth notes, and then a quarter note, and then 2 eighth notes. So it's 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and that's the timing for it. So we start off, we're on the 2nd fret, 4th string with your 1st finger, and the 5th fret of the 2nd string with your 4th finger. And like I said, you've got 1 and 2 and then we're going to move up a whole step. So now our 1st finger's on the 4th fret, our 4th finger's on the 7th fret, and that's for beat 3, and then up another half step. So now we're at frets 5 and 8 for 4 and. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. So after we move, so that's the first measure, and then when we go to the 2nd measure, we just stay where we were on 5 and 8, and that's 1 and 2 and then for beat 3, we're going to move all the way up, so we're at 9 and 12, 3, and then down a whole step from there to 7 and 10 for 4 and. So we start, the first 2 measures are. And then we go to that 3rd measure, we're still at 7 and 10, so 1 and 2 and back to the 4th fret for beat 3, and then up a half step to 5 and 8 for 4 and then this 4th measure is just all 8th notes, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that right there is the majority of the solo. What I just played there is the first 4 measures. Well, it's technically the first 12 measures because you just play it 3 times in a row. So we've got. Whoops. Damn it. So that there is, that's the first 4 measures, and like I said, you're going to repeat that 3 times. So after we've repeated it 3 times, it starts off the same way as it did. So we go back to the 2nd and 5th fret, 1 and 2 and up to 4, then up to 5, and then the next measure, that's the first, 1 and 2 and 9 and 12 for 3. Then back to 6 and 10, or 7 and 10 rather, for beat for 4 and then we're going to move back up again to 9 and 12, and we've got 3 whole measures of that, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and then you rest for the remaining part of it. So. So that's repeating it 3 times. And that's it. All right, so next we have is Wake Me Up When September Ends. Another, fairly easy solo. In a lot of ways is easier than the previous one because you don't have that octave thing. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a slide from nowhere to the 8th fret of the 2nd string with your 2nd finger. and then we're going to follow that with the 7th fret of the 1st string with your 1st finger. So we have, and you want these notes to kind of ring out over the top of each other. So you do the slide from nowhere to 8, and then to 7, back to 8, 7, 8, 7. So now that is the first measure. So each time there's a position shift, it's a new measure. Now we do a slide from nowhere to 7 this time, but with our 1st finger. And then we're just going to bar that across, so we're going to get 7 on the 1st string again. So the first 2 measures. Now we're going to do the same thing we just did here on 7, but we're going to do it on 8. But you're going to want to use your middle finger. So now we do a slide from nowhere to 8. Now, the reason that we want to use this finger is it's going to set us up for what comes next. So your 2nd finger will be on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. Your 1st finger will be on the 7th fret of the 1st string, and your 4th finger will be on the 10th fret of the 1st string. Now we're going to pick that, and then it's 8-8, so I just take my 3rd finger and put it on the 8th fret of the 1st string, and we're just picking the 2nd and the 1st string together. But that note, the 8th fret on the 2nd string, just stays there. So we pick that and we take it off, and now we're at 8 and 7. So 8 and 10, 8 and 8, 8 and 7. So we have 1 and 2 back to 8, and back to 10, 3, back to 8, and then 8 and 7 for 4. So that whole first sequence. Just like that. All right, and then moving on from there. So that's the first 4 measures. All right, so for the next 3 measures, we're actually going to do the same thing that we did on the first 3 measures. So we do the slide from nowhere to 8 again. And then 7, 8. But now it's going to change. So we've got our 2nd finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our 1st finger, we're going to bar it across the 3rd and 2nd string at the 7th fret. Now we're going to play on the 3rd, the 3rd string. So now we're going to play the 3rd and the 2nd string together. So we're going to count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then just simply take your 2nd finger off. So now you're playing the 3rd and 2nd string just at the 7th fret. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and this part repeats. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and... So that whole solo, whoops. Just like that. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that and you got something out of it. If you like this lesson, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below if there's something you'd like to see either myself or one of the other instructors at guitarcontrol.com do in a future lesson. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the new lessons that are published throughout the week. And that's all I've got for you today. So until next time.